right, here we go. We're with the one and only Pastor Caleb Trevor. What's his head? Do you have any other nicknames?
I think that's it.
That's
Skew.
about it. Yeah.
Skew.
Skewy. You may know him as a children's pastor here, but he is more popularly known from his SQ reviews on YouTube. Should we link it? We'll link it down below so that people can look at your...
Yeah.
What's your secret tunnel one?
Oh, yeah, exploring 100-year-old tunnels in Minneapolis. It's got like 2.7 thousand views.
Yeah.
So you're definitely going to have to like and subscribe to the channel.
Go check it out.
Yeah,
and Pastor Noah's in it too.
And yes, Pastor Noah is in it. Long time good friend of mine. So
yeah. Well, hey, why don't you just take a quick second or a couple minutes actually and introduce yourself? Other than being Caleb and the children's pastor, what do people need to know about you?
Yeah. So other than me being the children's pastor and my name being Caleb, I grew up, spent half my life in Illinois. And then probably 8 years ago, something like that, I can't even keep count, moved to Minnesota. My dad had got a full-time job at a church about 45 minutes from here in Cold Spring, Minnesota, as their children's pastor. And so we had moved here about 8 years ago and have loved it ever since. I went to Ricori High School, and then after that went to North Central University and graduated last spring, right? Something like that. Yeah, last spring. And I've been here for about a year now.
Yes.
So last January is when I got hired on, and it's been such an exciting, amazing journey. Family, I've got a brother and a sister. My sister is 15, and that's really scary because that means she'll be driving in a year. And then my brother is 19 years old, and he's actually going into EMT training. And
awesome.
So he wants to be a firefighter. So
I just saw a first responders only Price is Right.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Like an episode?
Yeah, an episode. It was just
Nuh-uh.
it was all first responders.
Oh, that's
Firemen,
cool.
sheriffs, cops.
Was it like a tribute
911
to
dispatch.
just like
I think
all the
so.
work they've done? And
I would hope so.
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it was cool.
That's a little bit about me.
Yeah.
Am I missing anything?
Grew up going to church.
Yeah, grew up going to church. My parents grew up Christians. Their parents grew up Christians. And so church has been really a big part of our lives since the beginning. And so, yeah, always been heavily involved in church and serving. So it's been really cool to just see those stages kind of as they come. But
Yeah. That's awesome. And I love your story because when we talked about it a little bit the other day, you were just sharing about how, you did have a good childhood, good upbringing and all that stuff, yet you still had doubts or moments of like uneasiness and stuff in your life, and that really has shaped who you are today. And I think a great reason why we wanted to use your story first is because of that truth. A lot of us, we're not coming from extremely broken homes or drug addictions or anything like that. Like, many of us have grown up in the church, or at least have grown up, none of us grew up in like a third world country at the very least. You know? So we have at least a good start on life compared to many, many other people. But so you started serving at church, right?
Yeah. I was a little bit of backstory here. Growing up, my dad had always been my kids' leader. He wasn't a pastor at the time. He had worked in the trades, and God kind of had a later call into ministry for him. And so before he was a pastor, he was just our kids' leader at a small church. And then he wasn't a pastor until I was maybe a fifth grader, something like that. And then he kind of was part-time there as the children's pastor. And I remember my initial experience in serving started with me just not wanting to go to adult service. I grew up in a very traditional, old school church. We had our congregation was maybe 80 people, very old school. And so sermons were dry, and as a sixth grader, I'm like, I don't want to listen to this guy. I don't even understand half the things that he's talking about. And so, but something I did love was kids' church.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? I wonder if I can maybe stick around on Sundays and serve as a sixth grader. And so that's kind of the starting point of where I was in serving.
Yeah, that's great. And so you were at church a lot if your dad's the leader and then goes to part-time. And then what was it like for you at school? Like, were you really open with your faith or not so much? Or
Yeah, so that was where I struggled a lot with. Growing up with my dad being a kids leader and then now a children's pastor, one of my biggest struggles was telling people that. So I lived pretty much all of elementary school, all of middle school, really up until mid-high school. I lived a double life in the sense of at home and at church. I had a strong relationship with Christ and people knew that. But when it came to school, I didn't tell anyone that I was a Christian. I didn't tell anybody that my dad was a children's pastor. I lied for years telling them that my dad was still in the trades and that he worked as a heating and air guy because it was a big fear of mine to think if these people know who I am, if they know I have a relationship with Jesus, if they know I go to church, what are they going to think of me? Are they going to think of me as a loser? Are they going to think of me as a little church boy that does everything that he's told to do by the pastor? And like, these were just little things in my head that were so false, but they felt so real to me. And that was a big fear of mine growing up was people at school, they did not know that I was a Christian. So that was probably a big challenge I faced early on.
Yeah. And here you are now, what, 10 years later?
Yeah.
And you're a children's pastor
Yep.
in Minnesota. How did you get to this point?
Yeah. It was amazing and honestly very amazingly ordinary in the sense of like we think of these big stories, you know, going to youth conventions, going to camp and hearing these speakers tell their stories about, you know, I went from a drug addict and now I'm living for Christ. You know, I didn't have that story. Mine was very much so like normal in a sense, you know. But it started with this fear of living that double life. And I remember as I began to serve in church, there was always that my conscience kind of ate at me. Like, I shouldn't be denying Christ at school. I shouldn't be denying the fact that I serve at church and that I go to church. But I would push those things way down.
Yep.
You know, I'm
Stuff
like,
it.
I don't want to, I just ignore them. But then I remember it was time for us to move. It was a big decision that we had to make as a family. We're very family oriented. I've got, you know, all my cousins and aunts and uncles. We live fairly close to each other. And so we've always grown up very, very family oriented. And so this was a tough change. And I remember thinking to myself, after we had moved, going into, we had moved in between my freshman and sophomore year of high school. And I remember going in to that school year as a sophomore, I said to myself, I got a decision to make. I can continue to live a double life. I can continue to be a Christian and love God at my home. I can continue to serve at church, and I can continue to not be a Christian at school or not claim to be one. Or I can choose to serve God in all three areas of my life, in every area of my life. And I realized from that point on, I'm like, you know what? This is a great opportunity for me to shift my focus and say, I'm going to embrace my relationship with Jesus. And from that point on, I went to school and I made sure people knew that I was a Christian. I made sure people knew that my dad was a pastor at a church. I wasn't afraid of those things anymore. And really, it took me just saying, suck it up, have confidence in yourself, have confidence in God, and just see what happens. And so taking that leap of faith, now going into a new school, new people, new friends, I had an opportunity to switch and say, you know what? God is a part of every aspect of my life. And it was scary because I didn't know how people were going to react. I didn't know if they were going to reject me, if they were going to make fun of me. Quite frankly, I didn't even care. This was a decision that I wanted to make. And honestly, the outcome was amazing. I was able to build relationships with so many of my high school friends, and they cared about me, not because I went out and I drank with them on a weekend, not because I would party with them on Friday nights or I would do drugs. They liked me because I was real, and there was nothing in between that. And so, going into, we would go to parties on a weekend, on a Friday night, and all my buddies would drink, not me. And they knew that, and not one of them would ever pressure me into doing that because they knew what I stood for, and they knew that I was confident in that. And so I would have my buddies, they would stick up for me. When there was times where I would be pressured into doing something that I wasn't comfortable doing, or drinking, or whatever it may be, my friends had my back. And they knew. They're like, no, he doesn't do that stuff.
Yeah.
And they'd protect me in that way. And I think I got to see true friendship and kind of start to develop.
That's really cool. You're still friends with all those guys?
Yeah, and actually something that's really cool is some of them still reach out and they ask for advice. I had a pastor friend of mine who mentioned to me, he's like, Caleb, keep those relationships, because 3, 4, 5 years down the road after you've graduated from high school, those are the guys that when they've hit rock bottom, they're going to look at the people in their life that had it together, and you're going to be the only one that they're going to recognize, and they're going to call you. And that's happened multiple times, all because I chose to forget about what people might think of me and have confidence in my relationship with God. And it allowed me to impact people throughout my life.
Yeah, that's great. So you kind of used the timing of a move and new school, new scenario of everything, to kind of be your opportunity, so to speak. But I mean, maybe a new year is a good time to allow that to be. Yeah. I remember when
Did we just start a new year?
We may have.
I think we did.
13 days ago. It's not too late to jump
on
the
train.
It's not too late.
No way.
I remember when I was stepping into a deeper relationship with God, because I grew up going to church and all that stuff. There was nothing special about the day. I was mowing lawns. In fact, I was loved my job. I worked for Oscar Oaks, and I was mowing lawns, and I was just like, this is great. I'm making good money, but like, there's got to be more.
Yeah.
There's got to be more for my life, other than mowing lawns for the rest of my life. And took some opportunities, took some steps of faith, and just decided, like, God opens a door, I'm going to walk through it. So I think that's a great encouragement for people, is like, if he opens a door, he gives you an opportunity, step into it, and that's your opportunity to come in and be able to be fresh and be able to tell people, or be open with your faith, not just privately and all that good stuff. So talk me through, you've just moved to Minnesota, and your dad's a full-time kids pastor. You've decided you're not going to let your faith be private. You're going to be open. You're going to let people know that you're a Christian. You're going to stand firm in that. What was your next couple years like? Because now you're here. Now you're a pastor.
Yeah. It's, you're at a point where, okay, God, I've gone all in. What's next? Mm-hmm. So sophomore year, moved in, started the school year. Things were going great. Began to make friends, develop those relationships with this new motivation that I've got going. That summer in between my sophomore and my junior year, I go to kids camp, and I think I was helping with rec. I was too young to be a counselor, but I was doing something. It was rec, or if it was helping a counselor, I don't remember. But I remember in one of the services, they had stations throughout all of the room, and they says, here are our areas of different callings. And this was kind of designed more for the kids. But I kind of took
took
advantage.
advantage, yeah.
Yeah. I took advantage of that moment, and I'm like, you know what? Like, yes, right now we're supposed to be with our students, but I was like, I just feel something like I need to go over here. Maybe there's a student I need to pray for or what. But I went over to the call to ministry section and just began to pray over the students, and God began to give me just a little bit of direction of elevating some of the passions that I have in my life. And a big one is children's ministry. You know, you got to remember, I was serving in a church in the ministry since 6th grade. So I've been, 4 years in kind of starting that. And I remember after leaving that, I wrote down on a sheet of paper, hey, I believe God's calling me to children's ministry. The grammar was, I'm sure, amazing. But I says, this is what God's calling me to do. I feel a tug on my heart. And
you have that paper?
I do.
Go get it. Go get it.
Okay. Well,
we'll
hold on.
We'll cut it out.
Here's what we'll do.
Okay. Tell the story about the paper.
Let me tell it. All right. And then let me tell it.
And then I'll just cut to a scene of you holding the paper.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay, tell the story. I'm
right,
sorry. I got eager.
It's okay. So I wrote down on the sheet of paper, like, my call for ministry, feeling like God's just leading me in this direction to get more involved in children's ministry. And I remember I took that paper, folded it up, put it in my pocket. I don't know what happened. I leave camp. I'm like, all right, here's what I know. God's calling me to do this, so I want to get more involved in kids ministry. Kind of totally forgot about this sheet of paper in my pocket. So I become more involved throughout high school to the point where, me and my dad are doing stuff together and like just really feeling the passion for this, something I love to do. I love coming in on Sunday morning, seeing kids' smiling faces as they walk in and they're excited for church. And those are just things that warm my heart. And so now we're looking at crunch time. So junior year goes by, serving, loving the Lord, continuing my call to ministry. Senior year comes by. Now it's okay. It's college time. Where are you going to go to school? I know North Central was something that I had in mind because I was like, I'm going to ministry. Like it wasn't ever really a second thought until kind of spring of my senior year and even going into the summer. Like, this is real. This is happening. And so I remember a big thing over the summer was just having an overwhelming sense of stress about what's next. Like, God, is this just something I love to do, or is this really a call that you've put on my life, or is this something that, my dad's a kids pastor, so I'm going to be a kids pastor. Like, is that just me doing what I think is easiest? Or is this really the direction you want me to go? And I battled that. A big thing was finances. In going into ministry, we don't go to this to make money. We don't go into this call to become successful and make millions. And with my dad being in children's ministry and me now going into it, like, where's his money going to come from? I worked hard in high school. I had jobs, but still, like, you look at their bills, $40,000 a year is nuts.
Yep.
So a big thing was just feeling this overwhelming stress of, am I going to afford this? Is where I'm supposed to go? And God just kind of began to show up in little ways that just continued to prove that this was the direction that God wanted me to go.
Yeah.
And one of the big things was, this was at camp. We're talking 3 weeks before I'm going to North Central. Okay, this is in August. And I remember Jeff Grinnell speaking at this thing, and I remember Monday night is a night just dedicated to salvation. And he used an amazing demonstration of, he had a soapbox. And what a soapbox meant back in the day is when you stand on this and you declare something, you're providing information, you're publicly displaying some sort of update. And towards the end of the service, he says, anyone who's never had a chance to ask Jesus into your heart, anyone who wants to renew their relationship with Jesus, come forward, and I want you to stand on this soapbox and declare your relationship with Jesus. Publicly say this. And I knew that I had a relationship with God. I was like, I know that's not really for me. I know that I'm set. Me and God, we're good.
We're tight.
Yeah, we're tight. He's stressing me out a little bit, but we're good. But something I remember that night, as people began to get onto the soapbox and declare Jesus as their Lord and Savior, my heart broke for these people that would step up, and I'm like crying, and I'm like, why am I crying? I don't even know this person. Like, who are you? But like every person that came up, it just began to like tears just poured out of my eyes, and I'm like, why is this hitting me so hard? And it's simply this: God was showing me my heart for people in this situation, and people that are desperately needing Christ. And that's what he was showing. He's opening my eyes to seeing the heart I have for ministry. And so I remember I was like, okay, cool. This is making sense. God's speaking to me. What's next? And then the following night, I remember it was good service. Didn't really feel anything. It was Thursday. Would that be Wednesday night? Wednesday night, I remember, I don't even remember what Jeff was talking about. Like, I don't remember
Sorry, Jeff.
Yeah, sorry, Jeff. I don't remember the exact message, but I just remember during the worship time, I felt just an overwhelming amount of anxiety. And I'm not an anxious person. Like, I don't really deal with anxiety much, but this was a case where I just was like, I felt stressed. I'm like, why am I at camp and feeling stressed about things, And I remember just feeling this, and I was asking God, like, relieve me from this. What's taking place? What are you trying to speak to me? And God gave me Psalms 27. I remember as clear as day, like all of a sudden, all this was building up, and then all of a sudden in my mind, Psalm 27. So I run back to the pew, I grab my Bible, and I begin to read Psalms 27, and this is what it says. It says, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When wicked advance against me to devour me, it is my enemies and my foes who will stumble and fall. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then I will be confident." And I remember after reading that, I read it out loud. Like, it was just an incredible moment. After that, all of my just anxiety, my stress, my fear of what's next, gone. And I remember, like, it was an overwhelming sense of peace that I have not felt in a long time. And it just made me realize, like, God is speaking to me saying, it's okay. This is where you're going. You are following my plan. Continue. And that's not even the coolest part. Coolest part is when I come home to share with my parents this amazing thing that God has done for me. My dad asked me, he says, he's like, "So what night was this?" And I says, I think it was a Thursday night. And he said, "Cool." He says, what verse did God give you that night? And I said, Psalms 27. And he began to, like, break down in tears. I rarely see my dad cry about stuff. Okay. He just breaks down. And he shows me his journal and his prayer journal and says, "On Thursday, I was praying for you, and God gave me Psalms 27. And he says, God helped me realize that things were going to be okay, and he wanted me to deliver that message to you." And so seeing, like, all these pieces come together, and how God was working in my dad's life and giving us the same verse on the same night, probably at the same time, was just amazing. And so from that point on, like, all right, God, here we go. And really, all of college was smooth sailing. I've graduated from North Central next to debt-free. I'm in an amazing church with amazing people, serving God, ministering to people, all because I obeyed the call and realized that this is the plan for me. So now that piece of paper.
The piece of paper.
This is a cool part of the story here.
By the way, I didn't cry. I did not.
You didn't cry? I don't know. I thought you.
I was this close.
So
you told me that story yesterday, and I was like, I said,
so
no way.
The sheet of paper,
yes.
sophomore year of high school, feeling that call of ministry on my life. When I graduated North Central, actually, when I got licensed as a AG minister, my mom gave to me a plaque, and she had found that piece of paper in my pocket doing my laundry after camp. And she had found that piece of paper and says, I'm going to hold on to this, and I'm going to see where God takes Caleb. And the day I got licensed, she gives me a present, and it's this plaque with this sheet of paper and it all wrinkled up. Melted candy stains from her junk drawer and all, with a picture of the day that I got credentialed. And just what an amazing story of God taking me from being afraid to even share the love of Jesus with my own friends to now ministering to kids every single day. And just that path of nothing crazy, nothing, no crazy backstory, but still powerful things that have taken place in my life that I've seen and think are extraordinary.
Yeah.
So,
go get your paper.
Do you want me to go get
Yeah,
it?
go get your paper.
So here is what my mom gave me on the day that I got licensed. It's a picture of me, and that is my future wife, my beautiful fiance, Anya. And here it has a sheet of paper. It's even got a little bit on the back. Here's my goofy side right there. I can't tell you, Anya got so mad at me when she saw me wear those red socks. When I walked on the stage, she says, all I could see was those stupid red socks. So
let me see. I never saw the Red Sox.
Yeah, so you can see on the back there. Red.
Yeah, the Chicago, the Blackhawks.
Yes.
Wow.
So, and I can't tell you how many spelling errors are on here. So you disregard those. But this here is now something that I can always look back on.
Yeah.
When I'm having a tough time, when ministry seems hard, when it feels like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing according to God's will, this is a simple reminder of, Caleb, you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So.
Now you say that you don't have any major things in your story, but I feel like the Psalm 27 thing, that's huge. That's amazing. The way that God orchestrated that, and that it was Thursday and you had it at the same time on Thursday. And then here you go, bless your mom's heart for doing your laundry for you and going through your pockets. Anya, if you're watching this, go through the pants, because you never know what you're gonna find.
You never know what you'll find in my back pocket.
She doesn't need the diamond ring. She already got that.
No, yeah, she did.
But now, even today, you have this reminder, and that's great. Just to help us in this moment, because we have, some of us may not have this amazing of a thing, and maybe I'm jealous, but no, I'm not jealous. I'm a little jealous. But and you're talking about how you can look back at this when you're having doubts about, whether you should be in ministry or not. Do you have any advice for young adults today who may not have this type of thing? Like, what should they do? Because remember, the ultimate goal here is that they are encouraged by your story to examine their life so that they can go and share and step into their faith the way that you have.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is keep a watchful eye out for things God may be doing in your life, because the biggest things you can often miss. I look at this, and if I wouldn't have focused on this aspect, if I wouldn't have gone to my parents and told them what God had done for me, this story wouldn't be half as good, because it's seeing the faithfulness. So if you're ever feeling like, gosh, I'm waiting for a God moment in my life. I'm waiting for a moment where God reveals himself to me. He gives me this big plan. A lot of times it's not this big, giant, gleaming moment with you and God. It's not always the case. Sometimes we need to examine our lives and we need to think about, okay, maybe let's see, where do I think God has shown up? Because you might think those moments, it's easy to overlook.
Yeah.
And so not overlooking the little God moments, because you'll start to recognize they're a lot bigger than what you think, would be my advice. Because, you can miss it.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, we're going to let you guys break up into your small groups and discuss some of these things. Maybe talk about some of those moments, be open with each other and all that good stuff. But Caleb, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have to admit, I was distracted by your mustache every once in a while.
You know what? It's coming in.
I wish one of your friends from high school would call you and tell you to shave it. But no, thank you for being here. I love the story. I think it's incredible. Love having you on the team. So much more than Noah. Just kidding.
Don't worry, it happens.
It's so good to have you guys both on the team and the youthness that you bring and all that stuff. So thank you for sharing. Hopefully people are encouraged. And yeah.
Sweet.
Have a great night.